Hey, how you doing? Thanks for downloading the show. Welcome to Garden Fork Radio. It's me and my friends talking about what we hope you think are interesting things. I call it eclectic DIY. Today, my friend Bob is here. We're Bob, the tank driver. We're going to talk about life between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Why are cops always stopping by manhole covers? And more interesting things from Bob's life. So, welcome, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you're doing well today.
I have no complaints. I have had a little bit of caffeine, so this should be fun.
Okay. Well, then I won't have to talk much, right?
Caffeine in me is good for about 10 minutes, and then it's like it gets kind of not fun. But
Yeah.
we're gonna go with it. I get a decaf coffee or a decaf Americano. And then sometimes they accidentally make it a regular one, or maybe I don't know, whatever they brew it in, maybe has a little caffeine in it, or the beans are mixed. I don't know. But sometimes, despite it being a decaf, I start to get buzzies, and that's
Wow.
today. All right. So I'm curious about cops and manhole covers.
Okay. Well, the thing is, when I went from being a lineman to a cable splicer because they made more money.
For the telephone company.
Yes. And back when I was a splicer, a lot of the cables, the containers that have splices in them and stuff like that were all lead. And in fact, before plastic insulated cable, all cables, even in the underground and aerial, a lot of times was lead.
Oh, wow.
The sheeting was lead. And so I worked with a lot of lead for quite a few years, and it's probably why I'm goofy. But we would have to, when we would build the container to hold the splice, it would be like it would be wrapped in a lead barrel. So we used to have to do a lot of melting of lead to seal the ends, and it gets way too complicated. But knowing we had all this lead in a furnace, the cops would stop by and bring us their molds for their bullets. And we would with some of the scrap lead and stuff, we would melt it all down, and we'd make, dozens and dozens and hundreds of bullets for them.
I've never heard of this before.
Yeah. Well, if you find some old timers that were splicers, they'll probably have done it themselves.
Because for ammunition, you can load your own ammunition. I mean, you can buy the stuff off the shelf, and there's the casing, the brass casing, which you can reuse. Right. And then the lead part has been, shot through the barrel and into a target or whatever. So you really can't recover that for the most part.
Yeah, so that's what they were doing. They were just reloading their ammunition, and it would save them money from having to buy preformed bullets. We would just pour them in. It was a simple process because we had all this molten lead. So they were happy. We were happy. It didn't bother us when we were blocking streets and all that kind of stuff. So
I read the cars that get pulled over the least by police are white cars, and even less are white pickup trucks, because white pickup trucks are usually like a utility vehicle or a construction vehicle, and generally they are not troublesome people. They're just like going to work. And the most pulled over cars are red, sporty little coupe cars for the obvious reasons there. But if they're red, that's like a big sign on your back.
And maybe that's why fire engines or fire trucks are red, so that they can pick them out real easy and be seen.
Yeah, get out of my way. Did you know that the fire trucks in New York City, the chassis are narrower than usual fire trucks?
So they can get through the streets?
Yeah, which makes them more expensive because it's a custom chassis. But
wow.
I've seen them blow through. I mean, we live on a decent street here, but some of them are quite narrow. And if there's a car double parked, they can't get down the street. So
right.
That becomes a circus because that fire engine horn is really loud.
Yes, it is. It sure is.
I would like one of those.
Well, I wonder, like in Europe and Japan and places like that, if their trucks are thinner than our normal trucks because they have narrow roads. In
Yeah, and
England,
yeah, they're also more modular. And I would the camera operator and I've been to London a couple times, and they're more of a multi-purpose vehicle because most of the calls for the fire department are actually EMT calls or medical emergency calls, and so that the cab and all that carries medical equipment and some. The crew they sit in these really nice chairs, these like bucket seats, and much just more of a modern styling than your classic New York City fire truck. So
yeah.
nice.
Well, did you want to hear about wiretapping the mob, or would you rather go right to the night shift?
Now, well, Bob sent me a list, and I'm like, well, we could talk about all these, but we're kind of cherry picking. But
Yeah,
since you were a lineman for the telephone company, I imagine wiretapping was going to come up at some point.
yeah. Okay, well let's talk about that. It was in the mid '80s, late '80s, and the phone company was very particular about doing any kind of wiretaps. I mean, they put the police agencies through hoops because they did, they were really concerned about privacy of communications. And one time they got a request for a wiretap. By this time, I was a supervisor, and they put in a request for a wiretap of a store. And I'm not going to mention the name of the store because they're still around. And what they did, we did all the, I had a guy do all the outside wiretaps to set up, but they wanted to actually, well, what they actually did was they broke into this place the night before and put microphones throughout the whole place.
Ah,
Yeah. So much for an alarm system, right?
yeah,
So they put microphones throughout the whole place, and they ran some wires because, back then there was no Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or nothing like that.
no,
So they ran wires back to what would be a meter room where all of the utilities came into the building, and they wired them back there. Well, somebody had to go in and wire them to the network. Well, the company told them, no, we are not sending one of our technicians into this place because it had to be done during the daytime,
yeah,
and the owner was going to be there, or whoever the people were. And so they said, well, we're not asking any of our technicians to go in there. It's too much. So I said, well, hell, I'm not part of the union anymore. I can choose. I'll go in and do it if they won't do it. I'll go in and do it. And the police had set up across the parking lot in the second floor of a building, looking to the back door of this establishment. So I got one of the trucks, one of the repair trucks, and I pulled up and got some tools, put some tools on everything, and I went in and I told the guy, I said, "I'm here. You have a problem on your phone, and I'm here to fix it." And he looks at me and he says, "There's no problem on my phone." I says, "Well, you probably don't realize it, but we're having other people complain that they're getting crosstalk from when you're on the phone." And he says, "What's that?" And it's a crosstalk is a real thing.
yes,
And where you can hear somebody in the background real faint, you can't talk to them, but you can hear them.
yeah,
And that's simply a problem with a twist in the wire. But he there was nothing wrong with his phone. I just told him that. And he said, "What?" He says, "What do you mean they can hear me?" I said, "They can hear you talking when you're on the phone, and it's interfering with their service. We need to fix it." And when I said other people could hear him talking on the phone, his face went white. I mean, he was like, "They can hear me talking?" I said, "Yes, and we're getting complaints. So I need to go check." Right? So we went into his meter room, and he's following me. He is right smack behind me. And so I go over and I think, oh man, get out of here so I can work on this because I could look up the the police technician told me where I would find his wires,
Yeah.
and I could see them, but I couldn't reach up there and grab them because it was obvious it was not part of the phone system.
Yeah.
And he's standing right there. So I get on there and I call the test center and I'm having a conversation. The guy in the test center has no idea what I'm talking about. And so I'm trying to make it sound like we're working on the line. And he's going, "Are you okay? What's going on?" So anyway, I took a couple measurements with a meter and I hung up and I said, I need to go outside for a while and check on a few things. So I went outside, went to the truck, right? And parked next to the truck was a cop in an undercover car.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I can't get this guy to leave me. He's gonna see what I'm doing. He said, "Oh, okay, we'll fix it." So I go back in and I start farting around again. And so the guy's watching me, and you could hear the front door ding. And they sent a female officer, undercover female officer, in there
Yeah.
and started as though she was a customer.
Ah.
So that got him out of the back, and I was able to connect the wires and get them all set up. But it was, and I tell you, so I went to where they were in the receiving end of this thing, and you could hear a pin drop anywhere in that store.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was that. I did a couple of them for the Secret Service, and because the Secret Service is involved with money laundering and all that kind of stuff, so I did some stuff with them. But that was interesting.
And you're not in witness protection either. So
No, no,
I mean there is a fascination in America, I think, with what's called the mob. I mean that I mean look at the Sopranos, and it kind of parlays into true crime. I think there was a heist, an art heist at a small museum in Boston, which I'm blanking on the name here, of course, and they they blamed it on the mob, and some of the people that belong to that certain mob family would talk about it, but the art was never recovered. And so I've seen several programs on, and they're like, priceless paintings that they cut out of their frames and just rolled up and walked out. The two people that came in to do the robbery were dressed as policemen. They tied up the night watchman and the maintenance guy, and they put him in the basement.
well,
And they just kind of took their time. And I guess they, at this point, I don't, the police or the investigators think that certain people did it and they've passed away. And then all of a sudden, one of the shows cuts to this storage building, these storage unit buildings
right.
near my apartment in Brooklyn. And they're like, the guy's standing outside and he goes, "I'm convinced they're in this building because blah, 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 and they said he drove down to Brooklyn on this street and they put him in this storage building and I'm convinced they're here." And I'm like, that's right near my house, It's just funny how they drove from Boston to New York with these multi-million-dollar paintings. And now it's thought that somebody burned them or they're buried, somewhere and never was
Oh,
going to be found. But there is a documentary on Netflix about that kind of thing. But there is kind of a fascination with that, I think. And I have never dealt with the mafia directly during my stay in New York, but there are some people I knew that were adjacent, let's just say, to them.
right.
And I was just very careful around those people because they could make your life miserable.
Yeah, they can. They sure can. My wife, before we met in South Florida, and before that, she worked for Diamond States Telephone in Delaware, and every now and then she had to go to Pennsylvania. And her girlfriend, the one that she was sharing an apartment with, had a member of her family that was called Uncle Pinky.
Uh,
And Uncle Pinky, there was a restaurant that a lot of those people used to visit, and Uncle Pinky had his own chair, his own table, and whenever my wife and Uncle Pinky's niece would come in, they ate for free.
Yeah, something going on there.
Yeah, yeah. Uncle Pinky was quite a character.
I think all families have that. There are a couple of, let's just say, colorful people in my family, me being one of them. So
Yeah.
my cousins are always like, when are you moving back to New Jersey? I'm like, never.
Ah, well, that's
Yeah, I was born in New Jersey. So,
yeah, me too. We lived in Hoboken and Weehawken.
oh yeah, I used to work on there was a film studio in Weehawken that I worked for. It
Yeah.
was interesting. So you worked the night shift for the phone company, and you were talking about some of the colorful things you saw overnight that people that are awake during the day do not see.
Yeah, and and I it was a double-edged sword because I loved working the shift, but I hated what it did to you as far as your physical being because you're on the opposite schedule of most of the rest of the world.
Yeah,
So you want to go home and go to bed when they're out mowing the lawn, the neighbors were mowing the lawns and all this stuff. So it was not good for your health, but boy did I love working that shift. It was the there's so many strange things that go on, and it's like it's a different universe. It's not like life during, or at least it was back when I worked these hours.
yeah,
I think there's a lot more people that work overnight now than back then. But so we would go to this one particular restaurant for our dinner break. It would be around 2:30 in the morning, and the nightclubs would be emptying out, and there was like four of them down on Federal Highway, and they'd all be emptying out at the same time, and they would just flood into this restaurant. And we would always go there because it was a show every Friday night, and if
yeah,
we were working Saturday, every Saturday night, people would come in dressed up, and every week somebody would come in dressed up as a butterfly, and with the big wings and the
yeah, yeah,
and the whole bit, and other people would be in all these costumes, and somebody would like try to look like a tiger and everything. So if people think all this stuff with the characters that people try and pretend they are
like the furries.
is new, it's not new. It's not new. You just didn't see it.
Yeah, there were. I think now that late night haunt is a Waffle House a lot of times.
Well, yeah, but this was no. It's still. In fact, this one is still there. It's it's in Fort Lauderdale, called Lester's Diner on State Road 84. As far as I know, it's still there. And it was a show every Friday and Saturday night. It was quite a show. But then, just in general, just moving around in the because most of it was downtown Fort Lauderdale and up into a little bit further north of that, and down by the airport and stuff off of US 1. And there was not a lot of traffic, not a lot of
Yeah,
people. So the people you did see, it's like, why are you out here at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning? And a lot of it was homeless people,
yeah,
but but different than the way these poor folks are now. It was mostly just men by themselves, and I think a lot of it might have been PTSD from World War II, and no one just knew about it back then.
would not
But
surprise me. No.
yeah, but they were like snowbirds, in the wintertime they would come south, and then in the summertime they'd go back up north. And I don't know how they traveled, but they were every year was you could, and they all had the same like meter rooms or stairwells picked out,
Yeah,
but they never gave anybody a hard time. Nothing. Every now and then they'd stop by the manhole and look down. They'd never ask for anything. They would just stop by, and a lot of times we'd give them half our lunch or something like that because they were just disadvantaged. But there was this one elderly lady. It was the strangest thing. I watched this lady for a year, and I saw her almost every night. She had a green trench coat on, and she carried a green bag, like a bag you get when you donate money to PBS and all that kind of stuff.
A tote bag, yeah.
Yeah, a tote bag. And I don't know what she had in there, but it had to be heavy because the straps were so tight and taut.
Yeah.
And I would invariably see her walking by, no matter where I was. I could be on this street, I could be 10 streets over. I would see her once a night walking around in the middle of the night, just headed somewhere because she was walking at a good clip. And I was thinking, wow, it's just a shame that people are like this, but they never bothered anybody. So I don't know what the difference is nowadays, and I'm not sure they bother that many people nowadays. But it was interesting, and they were basically good people, fine people, and you. So a lot of times we'd be driving to go to the yard and get supplies, or go to Lester's, and you'd be at a light, and there'd be a car in front of you, and the light would turn green, and it would just never move. It would
Yes.
just sit there.
And they weren't looking at their phone.
Yeah, no, not back in the 80s, but they would just sit there, and you'd say, "Oh, they've passed out or they've fallen asleep." So you get out and you go up to the. Now, I would never do this nowadays because you're liable to get shot.
Yeah.
You go up to the window and you start banging on the window to wake them up, and that kind of stuff happened all the time. But it was great. It was another perspective on the world, and I could tell you some other funny stories, but not on not on not so
not
everybody else
not
could hear
garden
it.
fork friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
the late '80s, I hung out. I lived in Brooklyn, but I hung out in the East Village, which was like the kind of punk, and then post punk scene there. And I was in my young 20s, so I could stay out all night, and it was inexpensive to drink. And yeah, it was kind of nice because I worked for a TV show, and I had a production. It's called a production car because I was one of the PAs. And I got to take it home on the weekends and at night. So we would drive around Manhattan, and there's almost no cars on the roads.
Yeah.
And back then they didn't have really speed limits. And since I had a production car, the name of the TV show, like the cops knew who we were.
Right.
So I got away with a lot of stuff. And then you talk about the craziness of a late night. My friend had somehow injured his thigh. He like jammed it on a piece of fence or something. And we were pretty freaked out. It was bleeding. And so I drove my friend to Bellevue Hospital, which then was emergency room, but also it was for mental health emergencies as well. And it was like 2 or 3 in the morning, and we walk into the emergency room, and everyone except us is on a gurney, and they're handcuffed, and there's a cop next to the gurney.
Oh Lord.
And a nurse walks up to them and says, "What are you doing here?"
What are you doing here without handcuffs?
And I said, "Well, my friend hurt his leg." And so he says, "Well, let me see." And she pulls down his pants, and the lady says, "You're fine. Get out of here."
And then did you get a thing the next day that they asked, "Would you like to rate us?"
Back then, it was a very different time, and it ended up as just a bruise. But
Yeah.
it was just one of those. But there is that beauty even now to late at night, and there is a different world out there, which I like. I just can't stay up that late anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I always enjoyed that. But let me tell you another story. It was a Friday night, and some contractor had cut a cable, buried cable, and it was a good size. It was a good size cable, like a 900 pair, which is 1,800 wires.
Ooh.
And like at this time I was still a supervisor, and I had to dig this big pit. No, it's a big thing to put it all back together. Well, across this empty field, which was like just a normal sized lot, was a little strip shopping center. And this guy comes out of the shopping center, and he comes over and is asking a few questions. So, well, was something we can help you with? He said, look, he said, would you like free pizza while you're out here working? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he says, I own that pizza shop It's Friday night. My phones don't work. I'm dying. I'm losing money, and I can't. I have no phone service. I said, okay, don't worry about it. So I took down his information and I got a hold of the guys. I said, look, you gotta find this one. Send somebody to the office. We'll tone it back. We'll do this one as soon as we can. It took about 45 minutes. We got him up and running. And he next thing I turn around, I see him walking across the field and he's got his arm full of pizza boxes. So he comes over and I said, sir, that's not necessary. We're happy to have you back in business. And he said, no. He said, you guys have these pizzas and they're going to be coming all night long. As long as you're here, I'm bringing you pizza. So I said, well, next time we have to arrange for, I don't know, should we see if we can find a cut cable next to a sushi bar or something? And then on a different one, it was the same thing, a buried cable that was cut, and we were right off the edge of the road in this trench putting it back together. And people would come by, and it was in a rough area of town. And people come by, and they were throwing cans and bottles at us and all kinds of stuff. So we call the police, and they'd come out. Well, what's the problem? I said, well, we need somebody. We're trying to put this cable back together. All these people are out of service. There's no 911 service or anything like that for this whole neighborhood. And we keep getting pelted with beer bottles and beer cans. He said, well, I can't stay here. I said, well, we need some help. He said, I cannot stay here. I'm sorry. And he left. The next thing I know, a taxi cab pulls up and he says, I'm out of business. What can you do to help me? And I said, well, it was a minority run cab company, a great guy. I've knew him for years, a great guy. And he says, I said, I can get you back as soon as I can, as soon as we can find your pair, we'll put it back together for you because I know you're losing business. I said, but we keep getting run out of here. People are pelting us with bottles and cans. And he says, I'll fix that. And the next thing you know, in about 20 minutes, here comes all these cab drivers, all these cabs and cab drivers, and they're lined up like fence posts alongside the road, daring people to throw stuff. So that's how you get taxi cab drivers as your bodyguards.
Wow, this isn't very DIY, but it's very interesting anyway.
I know. When I lived down south in South Florida, just before I came to Charleston, I'd lived in a condominium, and the condominium was filled with. My wife and I were in our 40s when we moved in, and the people called us the new kids in the building.
Oh,
So it's a lot of older people. And I have to tell you something. When I would engage some of these people in conversations, they had interesting stories that you couldn't believe.
yeah.
I mean, one guy, I helped him get stuff out of the trunk of his car one day, and he started talking to me. And he was he was a JAG officer that worked for MacArthur during the trials after Japan fell and surrendered.
What's a JAG officer?
It's a military lawyer.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and he worked on the trials of the Japanese war crimes trials and worked directly for MacArthur. And I thought, wow, this is so interesting.
Wow.
And there was the building was loaded with people like that.
Yeah, it's your, there's this institutional knowledge. It's just this history. Like when I drank, I would go to a particular bar here on Flatbush Avenue, and there were at the one end of the bar were these veterans who, when they had they had the veteran hat, and they were served in Vietnam, most of them, and I didn't really talk to them a lot, but they talked among themselves. And on Veterans Day, I would send them beers every year,
Yeah,
as a
that's
thank
great.
you. But just I've never had to experience that, and I appreciate people that have for us. And I think people forget that stuff sometimes.
Yeah, when I was the last half year when I was in before I got out of the army, I was on the honor guard and
Aha.
doing all the funerals,
Oh.
and that's why to this date I cannot go visit the Vietnam Memorial, the wall, because there's 80 names on that wall that I carried,
Oh.
and I just can't go there. Besides friends that I have on the wall.
Yeah, I can't go to the 9/11 museum
Oh, sure. Yep.
because I watched it fall.
Yeah. Boy, that's a day you never forget, huh?
No, and you know what I ran across because I'm still downsizing is when the towers fell, the winds blow from the west, and we are east of Manhattan, and they fell. There was this gray cloud, but as the kind of this, I don't know, it looked like a calm trail almost, but I thought it was like seagulls flying. I couldn't tell what it was coming from the towers to our neighborhood, and I'm on the roof watching this whole thing, and all of a sudden it's like we're being confetti is falling down onto the roof, and then I pick up a piece of paper.
Wow.
These are business records, and there was one that was all singed. It was a copy of a canceled check, and I just found it the other day, so I have that on my desk. So yeah, so that's why I don't want to go to the 9/11 museum.
Yeah, yeah. Trust me, I understand.
Wow, this has been a deep show. So guys, for the after show, we're going to talk about dishwasher repair and parts suppliers, whether to buy your parts on Amazon or a regular parts supply website. But as always, thanks for listening. If you have some thoughts, I would love to hear from it. The interim email address is gardenfork87@gmail.com. And thank you, Bob. I always love when you email me a list of things to talk about.
Okay. Well, I'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you. Garden Fork Radio is produced by Garden Fork Media LLC in Brooklyn, New York. The music in the show is licensed from audioblocks.com and uniquetracks.com.